Once one of the richest families in the world, murdered by jealous and greedy wealthy whites for their oil money, the awful story of the Osage community is full of heartbreak and tragic loss. Did you know that so many of the Osage community fell victim to the murders that the exact number is still not known? Welcome to Crime Site, the first channel that will uncover all details of the case. Make sure to watch till the end to learn some new facts which were not mentioned in the courtrooms. The Osage Murders, also known as the Osage Indian Murders, took place in the 1920s in the Osage Indian Nation in Oklahoma. At the time, the Osage Nation was one of the wealthiest communities in the world due to the large deposits of oil beneath their lands. From the years 1910 to 1930, there were over 60 deaths in the Osage community, and all of them were more mysterious than the last. The first death that raised suspicion and set off the investigation was of a young Osage woman. At just 21 years old, Anna Brown's life was cut short in the cruelest and most senseless of ways, leaving her friends and family to mourn her loss and seek justice for her death. As we imagine Anna, it is impossible not to feel sad for all the potential she had and all that she lost. With her bright smile and eager spirit, Anna represented all the hope and potential of her generation, and her death was a devastating blow not just to her loved ones, but to the entire Osage community. It is heartbreaking to think of the fear and confusion that Anna must have felt in her final moments, surrounded by a world that seemed bent on destroying her and her people. Her death was a tragedy and a reminder of the dark forces of greed and corruption that threatened the Osage Nation in the early 20th century. Nothing can ever make up for the loss the Osage family suffered since that day, not even now that the culprits have been caught. Her friends and family weren't even done mourning her when disaster struck once again. You see, Anna Brown's death meant that her fortune would now pass down to her husband, but since she was divorced, it went to her mother Lizzie. That meant that she was the next target, and it didn't take the murderers too long before they got to her too. Like many of the other victims, Lizzie's death was originally thought to be the result of natural causes, but later investigations revealed that it was likely a result of poisoning. The exact details of Lizzie's death are not widely known, as many records from the time were lost or destroyed. However, her death, along with the deaths of several other Osage people, helped set off the investigation into the murders and led to the uncovering of a sinister conspiracy involving wealthy whites and corrupt law enforcement officials who were killing Osage members for their oil money. The Osage Murders case is one of the most mysterious and shocking crimes in American history. Over the course of several years in the early 20th century, dozens of members of the Osage Nation were murdered, with many of the deaths originally thought to be from natural causes. However, as investigations continued, a sinister conspiracy involving wealthy whites and corrupt law enforcement officials emerged, and the Osage Murders were revealed to be one of the deadliest and most vicious acts of violence against indigenous people in the United States. When the case finally went to court, the nation was gripped by the unfolding drama as the families of the murdered Osage people fought for justice against a system that seemed stacked against them. Despite the overwhelming evidence against the killers, the trial was marked by twists and turns, as witnesses were threatened and evidence was tampered with. As the court proceedings continued, the audience could not help but feel a deep sense of sympathy for the families of the murdered Osage people. They watched as mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters were forced to relive the most traumatic moments of their lives as they told their stories and sought justice for their loved ones. Despite the many challenges, the families refused to give up, and their determination to see justice served was an inspiration to all. In the end, several of the killers were convicted and sentenced to life in prison, but the families' pain and loss could never be fully erased. Some aspects of the Osage murder case remains a mystery to this day, a testament to the deep-seated corruption and greed that threatens to undermine the very foundations of our justice system. It is a call to action for those who believe in a world where everyone can live in peace and dignity, and a reminder of the ongoing struggle for justice and equality for indigenous people. May we never forget the tragedy of the Osage Murders, and may we always stand in solidarity with those who seek justice and truth. Before we move on, make sure to hit the subscribe button because the true story of this case is only one of the insanely captivating stories we have covered on our channel. Believe us, you don't want to miss out. As for the mysteries that were solved, the Osage Tribal Council had strong suspicions about William K. Hale's involvement in many of the mysterious deaths in the Osage community. To get to the bottom of the crimes, the Commissioner of Indian Affairs and the Department of the Interior sent 4 agents to act as secret investigators. The agents spent 2 years working tirelessly to uncover the truth, and what they discovered was truly shocking. William K. Hale is a name that strikes fear into the hearts of many, a shadowy figure who, for a time, operated in the shadows of Osage County. A man whose name was whispered in hushed tones and associated with a series of murders that left the Osage Nation reeling. Little was known about him at the time, but as investigations continued, the truth of his sinister activities slowly began to come to light. Some called him the King of the Osage Hills, a man who had found his way to Osage County in search of wealth and power. He was cunning, manipulative, and ruthless, using his charisma and connections to carry out his crimes with impunity. But who was William K. Hale really? What was it that drove him to commit such heinous acts of violence against the Osage people? And how did he manage to evade the law for so long? These are the questions that continue to haunt those who remember the Osage Murders and the name William K. Hale. It turned out that Hale was the leader of a dangerous criminal ring, known in Osage County as the King of the Osage Hills. He and his nephews, Ernest and Brian Burkhart, had made their way to Osage County in search of jobs in the oil fields all the way from Texas, only to discover the vast wealth of the Osage Nation, who were receiving royalties from leases on their oil-rich lands. Hale saw an opportunity to get his hands on the wealth of the Osage people, including that of his nephew's wife, who was the last survivor of her family. In a cruel and calculating move, Hale convinced Ernest to marry Molly Kyle, a full-blooded Osage. From there, he plotted and carried out the murders of Molly's family members, including her mother, sisters, brother-in-law, and cousin. The goal was to collect the insurance money and head rights of each family member, leaving Molly and Ernest as the inheritors of all the head rights. But the investigation uncovered a sinister plot to poison Molly as well. The Osage Murders is a story that will always be remembered as a dark chapter in American history, one that forever changed the course of events for the Osage Nation and its people. It is a story of greed, corruption, and violence that left a trail of death and heartache in its wake. The impact of the Osage Murders was far-reaching and profound. It led to the creation of the FBI, as the Department of Justice was given the authority to investigate crimes on Native American reservations. The Osage Murders also brought attention to the issue of resource exploitation and the exploitation of Native American communities, which still exists today. The story of the Osage Murders is a tragedy, a tale of greed and corruption that left a lasting impact on American history. It is a reminder of the need to protect and defend the rights of marginalized communities and to ensure that justice is served for all. And it is a story that will always be remembered as a cautionary tale, a warning of the dangers that come with the pursuit of wealth and power at any cost. Today, many members of the Osage Nation are involved in a variety of activities, including farming, ranching, and working in various industries. The tribe also operates several businesses, including a casino, and is actively involved in preserving its culture and history through cultural events and educational programs. The family that could have been the richest in the world by now is not even in the conversation because of what happened to them in the 1920s. Nowadays, most Osage people live in the Osage Reservation in northern Oklahoma, and while they might not be super wealthy anymore, they receive quarterly royalty payments known as head rights. That's it for today. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the video on the right of the screen.